I'm delighted to be here. This is always a nice event to come in and welcome our newest members of our faculty over a meal with all of the leadership of the university. So let me begin by extending my personal welcome to all of you. And I mean that whether you're actually arriving to Pittsburgh for the first time, and this is a new beginning, not just of a position, but in a new city, in a new place. I hope you find this to be as welcoming and warm and wonderful a place as many of us has found Pittsburgh to be, or whether you're just, you've been in Pittsburgh for a long time and you're simply putting on a new hat and taking on a new role. I welcome you to your new hat and hope that that this new set of responsibilities, this new role that you'll play in the university is everything that you hope it to be. I always enjoy coming at the end of your orientation morning, and you all do look indeed much more oriented. But I also realize that I end up speaking over lunch, which means that I'm really your lunchtime entertainment. So I'm going to keep this a little bit lighter from a big message or speech and share with you, I guess if you will, the kinds of things that I've been thinking about lately. And maybe this serves as kind of a way of introducing ourselves to each other. You'll at least know what your chancellor's been thinking about. One thing that, of course, comes to mind this year as you take on your new role at the University of Pittsburgh is that the level of external noise around us is extremely loud. By almost every measure, this is an incredibly tumultuous time. And that's true whether it's, international, what's happening around the country with regard to nationalism or hate, whether it's demonstrations, controversial speakers, politics, budgets, immigration, and we've all probably been watching all of this on the news. It's hard not to follow it. And what I find to be particularly important is that universities will, and I mean this of Pitt as well, will not be immune from this for a number of reasons. One, we shouldn't be. A university is not an ivory tower. This is not supposed to be a monastic existence where we go away from the world and think deep thoughts. Universities derive their value from being embedded in society and in fact driving some of the real change and innovation around us. So we belong in the middle of the turbulence, and as a result we will feel it. I also think it's going to impact us because to a degree that I have not seen in my professional career, a time when universities themselves are being targeted as part of this unrest. There was for a long time a very broad consensus around the role of universities and support for them. Yes, we were often targeted because we're full of young people and a lot of energy and things are quite open here, but we can't avoid the fact that very many people are openly questioning the value that universities provide to society, wondering whether we have become partisan or are taking sides in this debate. We are being labeled, we are being targeted, and these are real effects. These are not simply moods. These come across in surveys, but they also come across in very tangible ways as we look at things like public support for education. You simply cannot avoid the fact that across the country, and in Pennsylvania this is true, that state support for these institutions of higher education is falling. And some of that falling is competing interest and other things that are happening, but some of it is this sense of whether in fact the value proposition of higher education is there. So I'm not trying to give you a downer as we do this, And I'm not going to provide any commentary on these external events themselves, but I do think it's important to reflect on what all of this external noise means for us here at the university. And I think for me it leads to a very optimistic note. But let me start with a couple of sort of key thoughts. One of the things that this time will put a premium on is our understanding and our value for a university community. You know, much of the criticism that's being directed against universities, I believe, stems from the fact that what we are is not well understood. And it's important to remember that a university is not really about being a place or a set of buildings or a place where a certain process takes place, learning or research. Above all, a university is a community. We get together, we join this community, and we dedicate ourselves to teaching, learning, scholarship, and advancing the frontiers of human understanding. And to make that happen, to create that community, we demand of ourselves certain things to make that work. On one hand, we demand the openness and vitality of the exchange of ideas, the vibrancy that we need to do this work. So we put a premium on your independence as faculty members, on freedom of expression and academic freedom to pursue your ideas. We want people to think in new ways and to challenge each other and have scholarly debates. But we also, at the same time, have to protect the fact that this is a community. So the other side of that same equation is, this is a place where all of you and all of our students and all of our staffs are full members. You all deserve to be here. You all have the right to fully participate in this community. And for that to work, part of the deal is we all have a responsibility to nurture it and to protect it. So in a funny way, it's a very free and open community with a backbone. We stand strongly against those things that would divide or break up the community, intimidation and violence, and things that ostracize certain members from this community from participating. Things like integrity and honesty and those core values of civility and respect are actually vitally important to making sure that this community can do what it does. And for many in the outside world, this sort of split personality between being so accommodating and open to all various ideas and yet being together and committed to each other is hard to understand and easy to attack. And I believe the best answer to that criticism or that critique from the outside is we have to live it. We simply have to demonstrate how well it works and recommit ourselves to the fact that one of the most valuable things we will all enjoy during our time here as part of this community is what the community provides. Together, we are greater than we are alone. And this environment of nurturing each other and supporting each other and protecting the development of new ways of thinking, helping students who are undertaking an intellectual journey of their own, advancing the frontiers of scholarship and extending that work into practice, these are all noble causes, and they are all things that are made better by the fact that we create this nurturing and supportive environment. So I think we're going to hear a lot about community in the coming year and in the coming years. I don't think this is a short-term period that we're entering. And in fact, this has been one of the main themes that we've been talking with the students about. That our freshmen, the main message has been, you are joining a community. And you voluntarily join that community with all the rights and privileges and responsibilities that come with it. And the same is true of all of you. And in fact, you play a central role in shaping and nurturing that community. The other thing I wanted to touch on is this idea of relevance. I talked a little bit about this last year to the new faculty who were coming in. It does strike me as quite inconsistent that at a time in human history where advanced learning and knowledge and scholarship have never been more important to almost any type of advancement or success, that we find ourselves questioning the value of institutions that provide this to an unprecedented level. I mean, isn't it strange that there's really been no time when we talk about, let's say, the economic well-being of those that have an education versus the ones that don't. It's never been larger. Societal benefit, commercial benefit of communities, health and wellness. These things are all strongly correlated with educational attainment levels. And yet we find ourselves at a time when the public is questioning its commitment to these things, when governments are reacting to that sense by changing funding. How do we reconcile this gap between the value that universities provide and the perception of the value that people have? And I think that we have to be very attentive to this gap. And I think there's several contributions. I think certainly part of this has to do with what's happening in the world around us. It's changing fast, in a large part due to the work that has come from universities. The pace of change in our technology and in our societies and the way we communicate, the way we think, is changing at an ever-accelerating rate. We have gone, if you think about it, in the period of our professional lives, from a time when information was scarce, when the role of universities was to curate and find and locate rare sources of information, to provide experts that people would go to as the gatekeepers to that information, to a time when information is now abundant. The whole world is swimming in unprecedented levels of available information, and it probably has great consequences for how we approach teaching and learning and research, and you all know that. And I think a lot of the reaction we're getting against expertise and against these kind of institutions stems from this kind of sudden, certainly on human terms, human history terms, sudden shift from information scarcity to abundance. Certainly cost is playing a role. The cost of higher education and other things has changed the equation in terms of how people think about what benefit they should expect to accrue from education. This also happens in research, and many of you know that research grants so often are looking for the ROI, the return. What's the benefit of this work? And I think there's also a debate about whether knowledge and education and learning are best thought of as individual benefits or societal benefits. And we're kind of in a time now where the pendulum is probably more on the individual side. And that's why a lot of governments and others are saying, look, and societal, we're gonna make our collective investments elsewhere. And I think as we reflect on this sort of focus on the relevance of our work, the good news for all of us is there is nothing wrong with what universities do. It remains true that we are the single biggest value contributors to society that I know of. And we've talked about this effect of the educational attainment and the role of research and our societal role. So we do not need, in this time of crisis, if you want to call it, to be thinking about looking for a new mission. There's nothing wrong with our mission. It is exactly what the world needs. That's the good news. We double down on why we're here. I think what it does is it gives us a lens to look at the ways in which we do the things that support that mission. And it will put a premium on certain aspects of our work. One of them certainly is innovation. If the world around us is changing this rapidly, if the world that a student comes in as a freshman is actually going to substantially change even in the 4 or 5 years that they're going to school here, which is actually happening, then we cannot be so static that they feel that the responsiveness and the adaptability of our institution is out of sync with what's happening in the world around us. And so our own willingness to be innovative and rethink our approaches to how we teach or how we do research or how we engage with students, I think will be incredibly important. And that's why we've been trying to focus on how do we immerse ourselves as faculty and teachers and learners in an information-rich environment and give you the tools you need to be as innovative as possible. I think that will continue to be a driving theme. The other one is really about collaboration. For a long time, activities we've done in the academy have focused on what we did. We were very activity-centric. We're an expert in this, and so we're going to find things where we can apply that expertise. This focus on relevance, and you certainly see this from funding agencies and others providers, are actually trying to tackle this the other way. Here's the problem that we want you to solve. How do you go find all of the expertise to work together to tackle that problem? It's problem-centric versus activity or expertise-centric. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. But it does exercise a very different set of muscles when you translate that within the university. And it puts a premium on us finding ways to work together when other people from different disciplines need to work together to solve that problem. And so I think we're going to continue to see a focus on the need to collaborate more, find each other and work together in ways that support those kind of problem-driven approaches. And finally, I think in the way we teach, the way we do research, and the way we serve our communities, being able to articulate the impact of what we are doing is going to continue to be very important. We have to be great communicators. It's not enough to simply do the great things we do and hope the rest of the world will understand. We have to be able to tell our story and to be able to explain to stakeholders why what we're doing is so important. Why do we do it the way we do it? And not simply expect the fact that we have sort of an entitlement to be understood. So I actually end on a rather optimistic note. I think that despite all of the noise that's happening around us and all of the open questions, we find ourselves today at a time of incredible opportunity. In many ways, what society most needs today is what we are best positioned to offer. And all that we're asking everyone to do is be a vibrant part of this community, be innovative, dynamic, be willing to work together and tackle the most important challenges that are facing society. And when you think about that, when you think about it that way, that's not such a bad challenge to be given to us. So let me end where I started. We are so glad that all of you are here and joining this Pitt community and this Pitt family. Our job is to support you and make you as successful and as productive as possible. And I look forward to meeting each and every one of you and hopefully getting a chance at some point to learn about your work and your activities here. Welcome to Pitt.